Welcome to the Fastball USA Training Center. This is Mike Ryan, owner and director of baseball development here at Fastball USA in Chicago. If you need more information about our programs, go to our website, www.fastballusa.com. Usually a few times in the fall, early winter, we'd like to do a few podcasts and share with people all the happenings and going on at Fastball and share with you some specific topics. Today's topic is if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. There is no in between. But before we go on to that, just want to cover some upcoming things that we have going on at Fastball USA coming up here pretty soon. First of all, Ron Woolforth and the Texas Baseball Ranch will be at Fastball USA November 9th, 10th, and 11th. Ron Woolforth is a world-renowned pitching instructor. We've been doing camps with him for the last several years. I think we've done 19 camps alone in the past 10 years. And Ron and his staff will be at Fastball USA November 9th, 10th, and 11th. There's a few spots remaining, but not very many. And also, we run our explosive hitting weekend boot camps, and we have several of those coming up, including November 16th through 18th. Another one December 28th to the 30th. And for the first time ever, we're running an alumni camp for those who have attended our previous explosive hitting camps or explosive hitting classes in the past. But let's move on to our today's topic, which is if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. So in the past, I would tell people all the time that you have a part of the season where you're making gains, and then you have what some people in the past have called maintenance. And I've grown not to like the word maintenance at all, because what I clearly see, and this goes above and beyond just baseball and softball development, but just in any phase, when most people go into what most commonly is called maintenance mode, really what's happening is they're by trying to stay and maintain, really what they start happening is they start going a little bit backwards. Now, it may not be dramatically backwards, but they gradually do that. So for the baseball and softball athlete, so for example, here in the Midwest, they start their season roughly around April 1st. Maybe high school season might start as late as March. And it goes, March, April, May, June, July. And in some continue the madness and will continue to go fall ball into September and October here in the Midwest, at least here in Chicago. So the problem is when the season starts, what ends up happening is players go into maintenance mode. Any kind of off-season gains they've made, any kind of improvement they made during the off-season quickly starts to go away, quicker than they think, for several reasons. And one of them is the duration of the season being too long, the number of games being played. If you speak to most pitchers go into survival mode, which is, I call it the pitch, rest, ice. They pitch, they rest, they ice, and they save themselves for the next outing. Pitchers are as guilty as this as ever. But we see this now even more with position players where they come up with sore arms, sore elbows, their body gets sore, their mechanics get sloppier, all because they're going into maintenance mode. So with the season very kind of long or playing a lot of games, it leaves very little time for improvement or for training. So key months, April, May, June, July, a lot of baseball people take August off, and then some of them continue the madness of continuing baseball in September, October, or they'll go into another sport. So their time to train is generally in the off season. So a typical travel team in Chicago, what they'll do is they'll start practices in January, February, March. If they're ambitious, some of these guys might do lessons and or train in November, December, and then they'll go another 5-6 months once the season starts without any training whatsoever. So I want to be clear in this and what I've seen. It is, I look at it, there is no gray area. Either you're working on getting better or you're getting worse. And I've seen this time and time again proven with our results. So as a training center, we are very in tune with measuring our players' training. So we measure ball exit velocity, bat speeds, throwing speeds, positional speeds, accuracies, and far more than that. But however, what we consistently typically see is dips in velocity and dips in bat speed and exit velocity after the season and as the season goes on, and for obvious reasons. It's very difficult to improve when you're going into survival mode. So I want you to think of it like this. If you're going to get better as an elite athlete, I want you to start asking your questions. How does your training time compare to your playing time? So, for example, a lot of studies have been done out there that says if you want to be truly elite at something that you want to truly be elite, your training has to exceed your competition by 5 times. So that means for a baseball, softball player, you have to be practicing and training 5 times as much as you're playing. So if you're, say you play 10 hours of games, you need to be at about 50 hours of training or practice. And I'm telling you right now, I'd say about 1% of the population is doing that. And if you're like 3 times as much as you're playing, I'd say we're probably talking about 5% of the population. So I would say a minimum of 3 times and as great as 5 times as much as you're training. So I estimated, for example, last year my son played roughly about 80 games. So 80 games, and you're looking at roughly between pregame and game, you're roughly 3 hours a time out there. That's 240 hours of being on a field. And so if you look at that and you go, okay, that's interesting. So my training would have to be 5 times that, absolutely, or even 3 times that, going over 700 hours of practice, preparation, and training. So, and I'm gonna, to be quite honest with you, I see a lot of people that actually don't even go to a 2-to-1 or even a 1-to-1. Their playing far exceeds their preparation. So when people ask me, truly, Coach Ryan, what do you think it takes to be elite? Step 1, I would say your training needs to far exceed your playing. So for those out there playing an excessive number of games in a short amount of time, I want you to think closely and start to add up those numbers. Where are you in the hours of playing performance, and where are you in the hours of preparation and training versus performance? I would start there and start to look at your calendar. If your son really is passionate, in this case about baseball or softball or really anything, so for example, if you're a musician, you're not going to have 5 performances and have 1 practice. But we typically see that all the time, though, in travel baseball, travel softball. I played 8 games this week. How many times did you practice? None or once. And that just doesn't add up to other things. Talk about, to an Olympic athlete, how they prepare for one event, the hours of training that they will put in for one event. And you start to understand that they put the emphasis is on the training. So with that said, my kind of worksheet for you to do is start figuring out how many games did your kid play, how many hours are they actually on a field versus how many hours to preparing for training. So if you want to be elite, you've got to start looking at the ratio of training versus playing. Now, if you're doing this casually, which most people are doing this casually and they don't even know it, they think they're playing travel baseball because they're elite, but really they're approaching it extremely casual because their training, it doesn't come even close to what they're even playing. So that's what I would call a casual athlete. Somebody has no idea what they're putting into it, and they may be on a travel team and think they're elite, but really what's happening is they're just repeating the same habits over and over again, hoping they get better just from playing in competition. So to flip this on you, if we turn this into school, and let's just say school copied the baseball in the Midwest philosophy, this means that your teacher would give out 5 tests a week and give you 1 day to prepare. Kind of quite the opposite. Or another way to look at it, baseball in the Midwest, that would be like going to school just for, say, January, February, March, and saying, okay, now we're going to take nonstop tests, April, May, June, July, and I'll see you next year to teach you the rest of the course. Of course that's stupid. Of course that doesn't make sense, but we see that constantly repeated. Now, for the parents out there, of course, it's a lot more exciting to pull up your lawn chair, watch your kid play. You can invite your family. Everybody gets to watch, and we get to see the trophies and the rings and the T-shirts and all that. But what is not as interesting is the sweat that gets put into training, the focus that gets put into training. It's not as exciting because nobody can see it, but that is where your kid has to be different. Again, not the number of games, Okay, the game in our world is simply a test, no different than getting a test at school. When you're playing the games, that is a test of your ability. Now, once you learn what you're good at, what you're struggling at, it's time to get back to practice and training. So if you want to be elite, you're going to have to be different. And different means you have to prepare and think differently than everybody else. That is just one portion of becoming an elite player, but that's the first one that jumps out in my mind. If you're looking for more information on training, we run ongoing classes at Fastball USA. We have youth classes, which we refer to our major classes for ages 8 through 12. We also have elite training, which is generally reserved for ages 13 through college, and that is a more serious, more dynamic, more intensive type of training we do. Check out our website, www.fastballusa.com. If you're listening to this and you're nowhere near Chicago, also check out our weekend boot camp, starting with the Ron Wolforth pitching camps that we'll be running, one in November, another one later on this winter. And also check out our weekend explosive hitting camps that we run periodically throughout the year. For more information, check out our website, www.fastballusa.com, and you can send me an email directly at fastballusa@hotmail.com. This is Mike Ryan with the Fastball USA Training Centers. And remember, if you're going to be great, think differently and be uncommon.